Hello, buonasera.
Buonasera a tutti.
Hello, I'm Mark Rucker. I'm the Associate Artistic Director here at ACT and also the director of this production of Napoli. And welcome to Naples. This is Linda Alper and Beatrice Basso, who are the translators of the play Napoli. Beatrice is also the director of New Works here at ACT, so she's been with me in rehearsals for the last several weeks. And Linda just got off a plane from Portland and hasn't seen a bit of it. So
I'm as excited as you are to see it.
it's a nerve-wracking night for me. So I wanted to start by asking you two how you came together to do, I know you've done two Di Filippos, and to tell us a little bit about Di Filippo.
Yeah, so
Do you want me to
Yeah,
start with how
start,
we came
start.
together?
Yeah.
It was about, I think maybe 11 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland. And Libby Apple, who was the artistic director at the time, was interested in a play called, another fabulous play by Eduardo Di Filippo called Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And the only translation of the play at the time was a British translation. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more, that Di Filippo writes in dialect, in Neapolitan dialect. So how you translate it is a real choice, and it's a little tricky. And the existing translation had taken the play and put it in Cockney dialect. That was their choice, which was, I mean, they were British, and it was a production that had been done with Laurence Olivier and Joan Plowright. So, but didn't seem like the right voice for an American company. And she put us together. She met Bea. How?
Well, I was I just finished my first internship, and it happened to be an internship at ACT, working on another Italian play, Enrico IV by Pirandello. I don't know if any of you saw it years ago. And I was trying to make my way, or I guess discover who and what I wanted to be in the American theater. And so I drove up to Ashland, and I decided to interview the artistic director there to then have this interview published by some Italian theater magazine. So, but in the course of the conversation is when this thing of Eduardo De Filippo came up, and I feel shortly thereafter she had the idea of pairing up someone native, like I was, although I come from Venice, for a disclaimer, and not Naples, and it is very different. So it took research for me too, but and then she wanted, I think, someone who was a writer already. Linda has adapted many things for, and also written plays now, but certainly a couple of things for Oregon Shakespeare Festival already at that time. And also some of you may know her stage work. If you've gone to Ashland, she's a brilliant actress, and she was then going to play the lead both in Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then later in Napoli, Milionaria, when we did it a few years later there. So then we just started to chat, and Linda had some Italian too. So there was a sort of meeting of different strengths. And in truth, Saturday, Sunday, Monday was a good warm-up for Napoli, because Saturday, Sunday, Monday is more, it's an easier play in a way. It's written more in Italian, even though there is Neapolitan, but it's written more in standard Italian. It's a middle-class family. It's all about food and fights and reconciliation, and lighter. But it was very well liked up there in the long run, and so then the decision was made to try maybe a darker or more complicated and more interesting, really, De Filippo play, which happened to be Napoli.
And Saturday, Sunday, Monday also has a much more conventional structure than this play. So that made it easier too.
That's
much more familiar both to, I think, Bea and me and to our audiences, whereas this play's a little more exotic.
Will you talk a little bit about how Neapolitan is different in Italy?
Yes, I mean, you must all know that, because Italy was unified quite late compared to its history in 1861, each region had the time to really develop into a very unique and different place with different traditions, foods, sounds, dialects, even superstitions, and so forth. And it's all because each region had a different reign and different invaders. And of all the invaders of Italy, Campania, where Naples sits, is probably the most invaded region because it starts from the Greeks, and then the French reigned there for a long time, and then maybe most famously the Spanish with the Bourbons, who left a real mark and a sort of love for honor and tradition and so forth. And then all the way to fascism, which was lived as an invasion. And then there is this big influence of the Camorra, which is basically the local mafia. So it's a complicated place, I would say, and very specific, but truly each region is so different and is a combination of all the influences and the location, so the food very much reflects where this city is positioned, so there's lots of tomatoes and fish, and in the north you'd have more meat and risotto and whatever. So that is just part of the landscape. And there is also, even to this day, kind of a divide between the north and the south. And often the south is viewed in a negative eye, with a negative eye, and it's part of the complications of Italian politics, really. So I will say, you all know what standard Italian sounds like, right? Così, si parla, è un po' musicale, così. Neapolitan, to me, sounds like a more open, rougher, quicker version of Italian. And some bits of it are very, very close, and if you know Italian, you would be able to pick them up. And then some words and some expressions and some precise descriptions or adjectives are completely unique. And we used one at the beginning of rehearsals, which I liked. A Neapolitan friend of mine came into rehearsals, and she said, "Make sure they don't walk like Americans." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, they have to be, they shouldn't be confident and with a certain, ease with the world. No, they should just be sfaticati, like, life's weight on you at all times, in some way. So that's just one expression that really is Neapolitan. I wouldn't know how to quite say it in the more standard and boring Italian that I speak.
And one of my favorite experiences when I've traveled to Italy many times and saw, I think, 5 or 6 different Di Filippo plays when I was there. And the first time I saw this play actually twice. It's the same production twice. And the first time I saw it was in Milan. And I was sitting with this group of older ladies who I think were there with a play-going group, Italian ladies from the region around Milan, I'm sure. And I started talking to them, trying to use my bad Italian. And they complained that they were having difficulty understanding the play.
Yeah, you would.
Understanding the Italian in the play, because the dialect was so different.
Yeah, and that's why I think even with the actors, at one point we were like, just trying to differentiate that it's really another language, almost. It's not just a rhythm thing or an intonation, or it's truly another language with different words that have come mainly from the different invaders and have made their way, so that it's this syncretic mix, really. And what's interesting is, and we had the sort of the fun of observing these differences and nuances in rehearsals, because De Filippo really uses Italian versus Neapolitan in specific ways. And I'll give you an example for sure, but another thing I was thinking about is that using Neapolitan was not an easy choice, because he started writing seriously in the 30s, and so right in the middle of fascist government, which had specifically discouraged any artistic activity that was not in standard Italian, because the propaganda was to be, unified and strong and one nation with no regionalisms and so forth. Horrible. But by that time, De Filippo and his sister and brother had already formed their company, Il Teatro Umoristico De Filippo, and they were so famous even outside of Naples and traveling all over Italy, and they used laughter a lot, right? And so they got away with using the Neapolitan, and De Filippo never stopped using the Neapolitan.
Can you tell us more about Di Filippo and how important he was and is?
Yes, I mean,
You go ahead.
I can start and you can add to it. You know, I was surprised that he's not very well known here. Did any of you know of him before this production? Show
Some.
me your
Couple,
hands.
yeah, couple, yeah.
Ah, well, you're very cultured because so
Yes.
far
It's not.
because of Ashland. So you
Oh.
saw. Oh, okay,
Oh.
wonderful. So yes, in Italy, he's truly revered and very well beloved, and he's almost like a classical author. You know, it's perceived differently than Luigi Pirandello, who's more in the literary canon in a way and more of an intellectual in terms of playwriting, but he's still up there, and certainly, you know, a precursor to Dario Fo, you know, so he's really, and, you know, a follower of Commedia dell'arte, but then making all the changes and making these people much more real and so forth. So he's really part of our tradition, and kids from Naples especially study him and see his plays continuously, but even I from the north, he's definitely someone you do study. And so it was a surprise to see how, even back when we worked the first time on it, that he was really quite unknown. He's truly an animal of the theater. You know, he grew up from a father who was his natural father, but not his legitimate father. So he had this scar, which he carried and sort of used in his work a lot. And his father, Eduardo Scarpetta, owned a theater company that used commedia quite a bit, and then added to it some playwrights who were more socially aware, and it was a slightly more serious theater, but still with some commedia elements. So Eduardo De Filippo grows up in this midst, and he was truly someone who would go on stage when he was 4 years old. He would shine the shoes of the actors, you know, helping the costume person. He would just do all the most humble jobs, and that's the way he grew up. And his father would make him copy plays of others. And it's beautiful when he talks about listening in the theater, even at a very young age. He says he would listen to the actors and think, oh, if I were doing that part in that moment, I would give it a breath, or I would pause for 3 seconds. And, you know, so he really comes from stage practice of the planks of theater. And I think, and so he became an actor, but also a director and a playwright out of necessity of having to write for his company, really. And then also he was a theater manager, you know, so he truly embodies the all-around theater man.
And I think you see in the plays, in both, if you saw the other play also in Ashland, plays that are written for a company.
Yeah.
I mean, they're huge, and that's a problem now because they have so many characters in them. And then they have, and you'll see this in the play tonight, a character will step forward who's a minor character, we were just talking about this, and suddenly have this little aria, this scene where they become the most important character in that scene. And that's a wonderful way to write for a company, because you want to create something special and a complete character for every actor in your company. And it doesn't happen that often. So you'll see that in the plays. And then also he wrote for himself. And so there's a fabulous role in each of these plays that's very particular and eccentric to his own eccentricities and personality. And then for his sister, who unfortunately, we have some film and a lot of film for RAI television of Eduardo. I don't know of anything except tiny, tiny things of his sister, unfortunately. Because she was supposed to be great. She was older than he was. And then his brother Peppino, who left and formed a team with Totò doing comedy. And then also you can see him, Peppino Di Filippo, in a couple of early Fellini films, I think.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So,
Yeah, but
there was a split, and he went off to have his own slightly more commercial career, I think.
Yeah, no, I think the split, they never recovered from it. And it happened, you know, right when World War II ended, which was a very traumatic experience for Italy, but Naples in particular. It was very bombarded and bombed. And at the very end in 45, Peppino and Eduardo split up, and the company dissolved, and Eduardo proceeded to form his own, Il Teatro di Eduardo, with the sister too. And also, he started to write in a slightly different vein. And Napoli Milionaria is the first play he writes. He really writes it on the heels of World War II, on the heels of his fight. And it's in a different style. I mean, the plays up until then had been quite comical throughout. And I think he really consciously wanted to embrace the trauma and the scar that the war had brought.
And so talk about the setting for the play, the timing of this play.
You mean that
history.
it
The
starts?
history of
think
what's
that's
going on in
important,
Naples
yeah.
at the time
Yeah.
of the
Well, in Act One, and fill in, but in Act One, we are in 1942, so it's towards the end of the second year of war for Italy. And as you know, at first, Italy paired up, had an alliance with Germany, unfortunately. And so that's the moment we see the family at first, right? So the war has already taken a toll on the city. Goods, certain kinds of goods are very hard to find. The black market has started to slowly become a reality. And bombing is happening from the Allied troops, right? So the English and the Americans on an almost daily basis or very frequently. And then Act Two takes place 14 months later. So it's after the Americans have arrived. And that, you know, what we call a liberation, but it's also a mixture of
And an occupation
in a way, especially,
But a very welcome occupation.
but a very welcome occupation, and you know, definitely very welcome. But that created a lot of consequence as well, and we'll see some of it, like sort of especially in the relationship between the American soldiers and these Italian girls who had big expectations and hopes for a better life and so forth. So that's, I think, the
If it piques your interest, and it's a fascinating period, there's a book called Naples 42.
That's great.
Naples
44,
44,
yeah.
sorry. That's fairly easy to find in a library. It may not be easy to find in a bookstore.
no, but online you can find it even
And
on
it's
Amazon.
fascinating. It's the account of an American,
And British.
English.
a British, thank you, officer who's there, and the people that he meets and what he deals with on a daily basis, and it's fascinating.
And he's a brilliant observer. I mean,
Yes.
it's truly, to me, it's fascinating that so quickly he actually picked up the soul and contradictions of this city at that time, but even now. He's probably the most useful material we found.
We had a lot of resource materials, and we put Xerox pictures all over the rehearsal room because it's incredible. It's incredibly rich world, and the faces of the people and all that. It was very inspiring.
I don't think some of it I found in
Yeah,
trips,
you sent
and
us a bunch.
I don't think I ever had a better time than going to Naples by myself and trying to find this material and having people. I was taken into back rooms with boxes, old shoe boxes filled with old photographs that people would show me, and just, you know, it was kind of an amazing.
And when you went, you also asked for every single location.
I wanted to find every location.
And
I
tell
found
us
them.
about it, because I
And
think
they
that's
were
fascinating.
all within this incredibly small area. Locations that I thought they would be 2 or 3 streets, would be
Right.
this neighborhood called, you know, Conte Mola or whatever.
Yeah.
And then 3 blocks away up on a hill would be and it would just be a street sign. And I finally asked about that to the people at the hotel where I was staying. And they said, well, those are the neighborhoods, that's what we call them. And
Yeah, and it's almost like every neighborhood is differentiated, you know, into micro bits of neighborhoods. So all the names you'll hear, and there are many, are all within a very, very small area. And it just goes to show you what kind of almost claustrophobia was going on. Do you know that if you were born in a certain place, you were probably going to marry there, stay there, your parents are there, your grandmother is there, your neighbors live in your house, you know, the outside and the inside you'll see are very related.
the street sometimes is like a sidewalk.
Yeah.
and people's laundry was outside. There's no other place to, hang it if it wasn't up high in the kind of classic, picturesque view of Naples. But literally, here's my window, and then that's your window. And then this sense of privacy of, because my window's here, I'm private. But yet people are walking right by you.
Yeah.
It was kind of amazing.
And this is not uncommon to have the bed be on full display, basically, from the street. So if you walk in these narrow streets of Quartieri Spagnoli, you literally peek inside family homes whose family bed is at the center, and that's the room. Then there's a tiny little kitchen, there's a tiny little bedroom usually, but that's it.
And unfortunately now there's usually a television there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Maybe we should start answering questions. Do you have questions for us?
Oh, wait until the mic arrives. Thank you.
The neighborhoods, are these sort of like the contrade of Siena? I mean, are these organized neighborhoods?
That's a good question. Contrade, that's specifically Tuscan. So another good example of extreme regionalisms. But they're even, I would say it's even more on top of each other. In
And
Naples.
not there it's different families, isn't it, in Siena?
I think so.
Where there are wars and old sort of,
The origin is, different noble families and their sort of surroundings in Tuscany.
That doesn't have that connotation.
No, and certainly, especially in the poor areas of Naples, those are the poor areas, and they have very little to do with the very wealthy. There is another side of Naples that we don't see at all in this play, or maybe vaguely in the character of Riccardo, but even he's not, but there is truly still nobility and this kind of ostentatious taste for showing off and pride of elegance, and there's that whole other thing, which I don't know. It's about Rome, but did anybody see La Grande Bellezza, The Great Beauty?
Saw it.
An Italian film that's now nominated for the Oscars, and
Fantastic.
it shows that kind of extreme nobility, faux nobility or real nobility, but very passé kind of world.
You see it.
Any other questions?
So how do you handle the dialect when you're translating it into English? Have them speak with a southern accent or something?
No. No, we talked a lot about it, and we actually worked on it a lot in rehearsal, and we had to in order to, we started off by seeing what it was like to have no dialect.
Or no accent.
No accent. And it didn't feel right. It really needed the rhythms. And it really needed, so we kind of created our own standard of a dialect and worked very hard to keep it from sounding too like New Jersey or something like that, But it's very tricky, very interesting process.
And that's what we do. That's the basic task that Bea and I had, was to take that dialect and to make it sound fresh and sound organic, but and sound of a certain place, but not sound like Brooklyn or New Jersey or something that we have an association with as Americans. So sometimes we used we translated things literally. I mean, I was trying to remember if don't keep talking just because you have a mouth. If that's actually a literal translation or not. And then sometimes it was changing things just slightly, but we never try not to use American slang. We don't use American profanity, things that set it very specifically in a specific place in America. So.
Sounds like you tried to create Anglopolitan or something.
Anglopolitan.
That's a good way to put it.
Yes, because truthfully, we also left, the names of people, the names of places, and all the greetings in the original Neapolitan. So some you may think, is that a mistake if you know some Italian? But we try to leave it, as we'd found it. As we'd found them, those words that can give a flavor, without being at all you don't need to understand, or it just sort of sets it in that place and time.
And then finding a rhythm that had a musicality to our ears that felt right. And then an individual voice. The other thing you always try and do is find an individual voice for every character. And you're trying to find the voice that Eduardo had and the differences that he gave to give each character their own voice. And so trying to somehow interpret that in English.
Down there.
Yes.
Which character did the playwright write for himself in this play?
Gennaro.
You'll know. The part that Marco plays.
Could you talk about the casting and the challenges you faced and
Yeah.
some of the people who are playing the roles?
Yeah. This is a joy to put together. Bea and I share an office at ACT, and we've not been in a rehearsal room together, so it's just, it's been great because we've been working on it for a year-ish, and so we're together working on it. It felt like it was exciting.
Yeah.
But we organized a reading of the play before Carrie chose to produce it, and we happened to do it when the fantastic actress Shauna McKenna was teaching our students, and Marco was around, and so we put it together with them and some of our favorite local actors and some of our students, and it went really well. It's when I fell in love with the piece. It's when I begged to get to work on it, and so some of those people from that reading are on the stage tonight.
Yeah, a lot of them, actually.
Yeah, really, a lot of them. And so that combination of, Marco and Shauna were magical together. It suited our students very well, which is one of the reasons that we were able to do it. It's so rare that you get to have a cast of 18 in the American theater these days. It's just...
How many students do you have in it?
8, I think.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
Yeah, and so it just all came together like that, and these are some of my favorite people and actors, and the whole the play is about family, and it was so great to have a sense of family from the get-go in the rehearsal room, and for that to grow throughout the process. Bea and Marco have a little son, Vittorio, who would come and visit us. He's 2?
Yeah, 2.5.
And so he came, and when we were doing our technical rehearsals, we were rehearsing the curtain call, and little Vittorio ran up to the edge of the stage and went, "Bravo, Papa! Bravo, Papa!"
He also, the next day, because Marco is wearing a mustache in the show, no, he's not wearing it, he grew it. So then the next day, Vittorio told me, recitare, palcoscenico, act, stage, con baffi. With mustache. That was his his dream for his future, which is scary, of course. But that was, I feel that I want to echo that what De Filippo wrote for a company, and of course in Ashland there was a company, and here because of the company members and old company members coming together, like Gregor is back and Anthony Fusco, it really felt also like that, and that is precious, and I don't know that it could work in another context where just each actor is hired in with no connection with each other, I don't know, I hope it will show.
Yeah, and it's for us to produce a piece like this, you have to have a leap of faith, because there's not much familiarity with De Filippo.
Right. Or with the title, or
and to do something this big is a leap, and luckily people are enjoying themselves and it's selling tickets. So I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah, because when you're on both sides, when you're in the staff and then also you're doing an artistic project, you feel a little bit more responsible. So
Yeah.
Well, I also think you all did a really good job of marketing it and describing it, and I'm sure a lot of thought went into that. I think it's very smart.
we did, and we learned some from the Ashland production, where we had left the title unchanged, so it read Napoli Milionaria, exclamation point, And we decided after long deliberations to drop Milionaria because the experience from Ashland was that people on the phone booking their tickets really didn't like to say such an unfamiliar word. And there was some embarrassment, and so then they didn't choose to see it, right?
It's true. We talked to the people in the box office, and people would be embarrassed to say a word they couldn't pronounce.
Millionaire, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that lesson was learned, and it's a tricky play to market because truly the first act is comedy, and the second act goes into a more somber place of questions asked about morality and people not quite finding each other anymore within a family, and
But still
just
woven
darker.
together with this humor, which
That's
is
true.
kind of amazing to watch in the second half.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yes, and always interspersed with
Yeah.
a little bit of the other flavor. It's true. Are there more questions?
Could you see the play being set in a different time period? Because obviously, in a few years, people start forgetting World War II.
I think it's such a piece of history
Yeah, I think so.
it's such a particular time in this particular place that I would hate to take that away from the experience of seeing it, and getting an opportunity to learn about this, even if it's farther and farther away for people. I mean, I guess
You could, but
you could.
really
but-
weird idea.
and because it is about the black market in Naples and the arrival of the Allied forces, I think it's very particular.
Yeah, but Linda, you were reminding me that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that Cockney adaptation was actually, they'd set it in the 70s, and it was written for the late 50s.
Which
So
changed a lot.
changes a lot.
A lot of things that I thought that was another problem there. I mean, the 70s were such a different time in terms of family life, in terms of women, and
Yeah, even in Italy. Yeah.
yeah. So
Somebody down here had a question?
I just wondered if he wrote for film.
Oh, if Eduardo wrote
Did-
for film? Yes, a lot. In the early 40s, I think, is really the time, or maybe early 50s too, actually, early 50s, is when he started to write scripts as well for film. And also he produced some of his own plays turned for, for TV a lot, even more than film. And if you go on YouTube, there are lots of bits and pieces from those filmed material, and they're always different from the plays. Like there is a film of Napoli Milionaria, and it's quite different, maybe a little more literal, a little more spelled out. And
I saw, what was the movie, the De Sica movie that was 3 parts?
yeah, the Gold of
Ora
Na-
di Napoli, the one
Ora
that's
di
the
Napoli.
stories. It's 4 stories actually.
No, this is with
Oh,
Sophia
I know
Loren
what-
and
I know what you
Marcello
mean.
Mastroianni.
Yesterday,
Tomorrow?
tomorrow.
Today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
And he wrote the first one
Yeah.
That's
yesterday.
right. He wrote that first.
Which is about a Neapolitan woman who stays out of jail by being pregnant every year when the police come to her, because you can't go to jail. So she just has kid after kid after kid.
Exactly. You will see this in this play too, how in Naples there's almost kind of a reverence for being able to circumvent the rules and be furbo, smart enough, clever enough to, and crafty really, right, to go around what the authorities decreed. Because authorities, including Camorra, can be crazy. And so people over the centuries really have learned to find ways out, which is also horrible and dangerous, and that city has a lot of trouble too to this day. But there's also great charm in that, and in reality being much less black and white that certainly we're used to in any more northern region or the Anglo-Saxon world. There is a lot of gray, a lot of exceptions, a lot of even non-judgment. And if something goes wrong or if someone strays, I don't know, there is just a more elasticity, I guess, until there isn't, and then it's tragedy, potentially. So I feel you'll see that a lot in the play.
Anybody else? Did you tell me that there's a tradition of having trouble with their trash getting
Oh yeah,
picked up?
there is a big problem about trash
But for a long time.
for a long time. Yeah. Many of you have been to Naples? Show me, show me. I'm curious.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
A lot of
that's
you.
a lot.
Yes. It's a unique place, right? It's another world. Yeah, some people hate it, some people love it. But certainly it's special, unique.
Did you have a question down here?
Yeah, I thought he did.
I know
And
so
over
there.
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your description and the description in the program of life in Naples around World War II suggest an explanation why Berlusconi, even recently, his behavior is tolerated more than that we in the United States might think would be reasonable. Would you care to comment on that?
What do you think? Now keep going. I'm interested. You mean in the sense that, oh, you mean in the sexual part? Every way. Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's the plague of Italy, you know, there is fatalism. Fatalism is very big all throughout Italy, in a sense that you can't control events because so much has happened in history outside our control. And so the consequence is that there isn't as much activism and positive thinking and action as certainly there is here or even in England. And so, you know, stagnation is very frequent, and that's why fascism could last 20 years, and that's why Berlusconi could last 20 years as well, which is unbelievable and heartbreaking. A part of me has dissociated somewhat just by virtue of being here for over 10 years. But if I think about it and knowing all the beauty that is there and all the potential, it's very sad. You know, now people of my generations mostly have left Italy. A lot have left Italy because the sort of the ruling class is so turgid and still, and there's even within the universities there are very few openings, you know, so whatever path you choose, it's quite hard unless you have a family business that's flourishing. So lots of my friends are in Berlin, in the States, in London, and yeah, now I have some hope with this guy from Florence, Renzi, who seems to have more energy, if nothing else. But you know, even as a young person, I remember in Italy, you don't quite feel that things can really change. And here, especially in California, you feel all is change and all is about the future and possibility. And that is wonderful and also scary. You know, there are always two sides, I feel, to every impulse as a country. But yeah.
Here?
Yeah, I think maybe we have time for a last one or two more questions, right?
Were there any major directorial problems that you had to solve?
Good. Do tell.
No, the whole thing is very much a balancing act of how you meet these people and the storyline and making sure. You know, like getting to know. I would call this play a kitchen table play. You know, it's the heart of the family is there, and so it's interesting challenge just in terms of staging to figure out how to keep things moving and not just still all the time. There's a lot of people coming and going, so it makes it easier. But that with the dialect getting everybody on the same page is a huge prop show, huge. And so that's a lot of fun, but it's a lot to so I try to watch it each night as if I'm watching it for the first time, so that I make sure that I'm like you, I'm seeing it for the first time and my eyes going to the right places and catching the right information, stuff like that. So it's just a lot of little things. But so much fun to have 18 actors. It's so refreshing, you know. usually that hardly happens even when we do Shakespeare now.
There's something so joyful about these plays, even this very serious, dark play. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, it's full of life.
I was
right?
talking to Bea because we start since we come to the theater, we usually start our day downstairs in Fred's, the bar, and do notes all around the table. And these note sessions have been riotous. There's just so much laughing and calling each other out, and it's just I sometimes feel a director, especially with a larger cast, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to give you a note in front of all these people sometimes, and it's just an interesting thing. This has been just so fun.
And open, no privacy.
No,
You
no
follow
privacy.
the rules of Napoli.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
All right.
wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
Grazie. Enjoy.